Pay attention to this security camera footage from a residential home in San Diego, California. It's 3:17 a.m. You're looking at the exterior of a quiet suburban house. Everything looks normal, peaceful, the kind of night where nothing should go wrong. Now watch the side window on the left. See that shadow moving inside? Someone's breaking in. But this isn't your typical burglar. This intruder is wearing a wetsuit, blacked out swimming goggles, and carrying a duffel bag full of zip ties, duct tape, and sedatives. In less than an hour, he'll kidnap a 29-year-old woman from her bedroom, drug her, and drive her hundreds of miles away. And when she finally escapes and tells police what happened, they won't believe her. They'll accuse her boyfriend of murder. They'll call the whole thing a hoax. They'll compare it to the movie Gone Girl and publicly humiliate the victims. But every word of her story is true. And the man who did this? He's a former Marine with a law degree from Harvard. A man who'd spent months planning the perfect crime. You know that feeling when you wake up in the middle of the night to a strange sound? That moment of confusion where you're not sure if you're dreaming or if something's actually wrong. For Jennifer Martinez and her boyfriend Ryan Foster, that feeling on the night of March 23, 2015, was the beginning of a nightmare that would last for months, and that almost no one would believe. Jennifer was 29 years old, a physical therapist living in San Diego with her boyfriend Ryan, a 30-year-old software engineer. They'd been together for 2 years and had just moved into a small house they were renting in a quiet neighborhood. Life was good. They were talking about getting engaged, about their future together. That future was about to be shattered in the most terrifying way imaginable. And then, when Jennifer tried to tell people what happened, she'd be accused of lying, of making the whole thing up, of being the villain instead of the victim. This is the story of a kidnapping so bizarre that police refused to believe it was real, of a victim who had to prove she wasn't a criminal, and of a predator with an Ivy League education who thought he was too smart to get caught. It's a story about how sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and how sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who hurt you most. Let me take you back to the evening of March 22, 2015. Jennifer and Ryan had a normal Sunday. They ran some errands, grabbed lunch at their favorite taco place, spent the afternoon watching movies on the couch. Around 10 p.m., they went to bed. Jennifer had to work early the next morning. Ryan had a big presentation later in the week he needed to prepare for. They fell asleep around 11 p.m., tangled together in their queen-size bed, completely unaware that someone had been watching their house, someone who knew their schedules, someone who'd been planning this for weeks. At approximately 3 a.m., Jennifer was pulled from sleep by a bright light shining directly in her face. At first, she thought it was Ryan using his phone, or maybe the lamp had somehow turned on. But as her eyes adjusted, she realized the light was a flashlight. And holding that flashlight was a figure dressed entirely in black, wearing what looked like swimming goggles that had been blacked out. Before Jennifer could scream, a gloved hand clamped over her mouth. A voice, calm, measured, almost professional, whispered in her ear, "Don't make a sound. There are 2 of us. My partner has a gun pointed at your boyfriend. If you scream, he dies." Ryan woke up to find another figure standing over him, what appeared to be a gun pressed against his temple. The voice told him the same thing. "Don't move, don't speak, or your girlfriend dies." For the next hour, Jennifer and Ryan were forced to lie face down on their bed while the intruders zip-tied their wrists and ankles. Duct tape was placed over their mouths. The goggles the intruders wore made it impossible to see their faces. The calm voice, later identified as belonging to a man named Marcus Sullivan, explained the situation in a way that was chillingly matter-of-fact. "This is a kidnapping," he said. "We're taking Jennifer. If you cooperate and follow our instructions exactly, she'll be returned unharmed in 48 hours. If you contact the police before we tell you to, she'll be killed. Do you understand?" Ryan, terrified and unable to speak through the tape, nodded frantically. Marcus continued his instructions. He placed headphones over Ryan's ears and played white noise, a disorienting tactic to keep Ryan from hearing what was happening. He told Ryan that his partner would stay in the house to watch him while Marcus took Jennifer. But here's the thing, there was no partner. Marcus was alone. It was an elaborate lie to control both victims at once. While Ryan was left bound and blindfolded with headphones blaring white noise, Marcus prepared Jennifer for transport. He gave her a sedative, a powerful drug that would keep her compliant and groggy. He dressed her in clothes he'd brought, sweatpants and a hoodie that would make her less conspicuous. Then he walked her out of her own house, put her in the trunk of his car, and drove away. Jennifer drifted in and out of consciousness during the drive. The sedative made everything fuzzy and dreamlike. She remembers stops, Marcus pulling over to check on her, to give her water, to make sure she was still breathing. She remembers his voice, always calm, always controlled, explaining that everything would be fine if she cooperated. Hours passed. Jennifer had no idea where she was or where they were going. The sedative kept her docile, unable to fight or run even when Marcus let her out of the trunk. Eventually, Jennifer would later learn it was early morning, they arrived at a cabin. Marcus carried her inside, laid her on a bed, and zip-tied her to the bed frame. And that's where Jennifer would stay for the next 2 days, held captive by a stranger in an unknown location, praying that Ryan was still alive and that someone would find her. Back at the house, Ryan remained bound and terrified. Hours passed. The white noise in his headphones continued. He had no way of knowing Jennifer was already gone, that the partner Marcus claimed was watching him didn't exist. It wasn't until almost 5 p.m. the next day, nearly 14 hours after the abduction, that Ryan managed to work one hand free from the zip ties. He tore off the duct tape, removed the headphones, and looked around the bedroom. He was alone. The house was empty. Jennifer was gone. Ryan's first instinct was to call the police immediately, but Marcus's threats echoed in his mind. If you contact police before we tell you to, she'll be killed. Ryan was paralyzed with indecision. What should he do? Every minute that passed felt like a betrayal of Jennifer. But what if calling the police got her killed? After agonizing for over an hour, Ryan decided he had to call. He couldn't just do nothing. At 6:47 p.m. on March 23rd, more than 15 hours after Jennifer was taken, Ryan called 911. "My girlfriend's been kidnapped," he told the dispatcher. "Someone broke into our house last night and took her. They said they'd kill her if I called the police, but I don't know what else to do." Within minutes, police officers arrived at Ryan and Jennifer's house, and that's when Ryan's nightmare took a new, unexpected turn. The police didn't believe him. When San Diego police detectives began investigating Ryan's kidnapping report, they immediately found his story suspicious. Why had he waited over 15 hours to call police? His explanation about being threatened didn't sit right with them. If your girlfriend's been kidnapped, wouldn't you call for help immediately? And where was the evidence of a break-in? There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no damaged locks. The house alarm system hadn't been triggered. How did these kidnappers get inside? Ryan's behavior also seemed off to investigators. He was anxious and agitated, yes, but he wasn't crying, wasn't falling apart the way they'd expect someone whose girlfriend had just been violently abducted to behave. To the detectives, he seemed like he was performing grief rather than genuinely experiencing it. Then there was the story itself. 2 kidnappers in wetsuits and blacked-out swimming goggles, zip ties and drugging and elaborate instructions. It sounded like something out of a movie. Specifically, it sounded like the plot of Gone Girl, the best-selling novel and recent film about a woman who fakes her own kidnapping. Within hours of beginning their investigation, detectives had formed a theory. Ryan had killed Jennifer, hidden her body somewhere, and made up this elaborate kidnapping story to cover his tracks. They brought Ryan in for questioning. For hours, detectives interrogated him, trying to poke holes in his story, trying to get him to confess. "Where's Jennifer's body, Ryan? What really happened that night? Did you two have a fight? Did things get out of hand?" Ryan insisted he was telling the truth. Jennifer had been kidnapped. He didn't know where she was. He was terrified for her life. But the more he insisted, the more suspicious the detectives became. They searched Ryan and Jennifer's house top to bottom. They were looking for blood evidence, signs of a struggle, anything that would prove Ryan had killed his girlfriend. They seized his computer, his phone, his car. Meanwhile, Jennifer was still being held captive. In that cabin in Lake Tahoe, though she didn't know where she was, Jennifer spent 2 days in a fog of fear and sedatives. Marcus kept her drugged but conscious. He brought her food and water, he allowed her to use the bathroom under supervision, and he assaulted her. The details of what Marcus did to Jennifer during those 2 days are horrific and will forever haunt her. But Jennifer survived. She stayed calm, tried to memorize details about her captor and her surroundings, and waited for an opportunity. On the morning of March 25th, 2 full days after her abduction, Marcus told Jennifer he was releasing her. "You cooperated," he said, as if that somehow made what he'd done acceptable. "You'll be dropped off somewhere safe. Don't contact police for 48 hours or we'll come back for you." Marcus blindfolded Jennifer, gave her another dose of sedative, and drove her for what felt like hours. When the car finally stopped, he walked her a short distance and removed her blindfold. They were in a parking lot in Huntington Beach, over 300 miles from Jennifer's home. It was early morning. The lot was nearly empty. "Start walking," Marcus told her. "Don't look back. Don't try to see my car. Just walk away." Jennifer, still groggy from the drugs, did as she was told. She walked across the parking lot, through a residential neighborhood, until she found a convenience store. Using the store's phone, she called her family. "I'm alive," she told her mother through tears. "I'm okay. I was kidnapped, but I'm okay now." Her family immediately contacted the police, who picked Jennifer up from the convenience store. Finally, the victim in this kidnapping case had returned. Finally, there would be proof that Ryan had been telling the truth. Except that's not what happened. When San Diego police learned that Jennifer had been found alive, their response wasn't relief or urgency to catch her kidnappers. Instead, they doubled down on their theory that the whole thing was a hoax. At a press conference on March 25th, the San Diego Police Department's lieutenant addressed the media. And what he said shocked everyone. "We have no evidence to support the claims of a kidnapping," he stated. "We believe this entire incident was fabricated. We are treating this as a hoax and will be seeking charges against those involved for wasting police resources." The implication was clear. Jennifer and Ryan had staged the whole thing. Maybe for attention, maybe for money, maybe just for the thrill of it. But the police believed they were lying. Jennifer, watching that press conference from her parents' house, was devastated. She'd just survived one of the most traumatic experiences imaginable. She'd been drugged, kidnapped, held captive, and assaulted. And now the police were calling her a liar on national television. The media ran with the Gone Girl comparison. Headlines screamed about the fake kidnapping. Jennifer and Ryan were portrayed as attention-seeking criminals who'd pulled off an elaborate hoax. Their names and faces were everywhere, associated with fraud and deception. Jennifer's employer put her on administrative leave pending the investigation. Ryan lost his job. Their friends didn't know what to believe. Their families were caught between supporting them and wondering if there was any truth to the police's claims. For Jennifer and Ryan, it felt like a second victimization. They'd survived the actual crime only to be destroyed by the system that was supposed to protect them. But Jennifer refused to back down. "I know what happened to me," she told her family. "I know what I survived, and I'm going to prove it." The problem was, she had no idea how. The police weren't investigating. The media had already convicted her and Ryan in the court of public opinion. And Marcus Sullivan was still out there, free and confident that he'd gotten away with it. It would take another crime and an alert detective to finally bring the truth to light. 3 months after Jennifer's kidnapping, on June 5, 2015, something happened 500 miles north that would finally crack the case wide open. A couple in Dublin, California, a suburb of San Francisco, woke up at 3 a.m. to find an intruder in their bedroom. He was dressed in black, wearing blacked-out swimming goggles, carrying zip ties and duct tape. It was Marcus Sullivan, attempting the same crime he'd pulled off with Jennifer. But this time, something went wrong. The homeowner, a former college wrestler named David Chen, fought back. He and his wife managed to wrestle the intruder out of their bedroom and down the stairs. Marcus fled through the front door, but in his rush to escape, he left behind crucial evidence: a cell phone, a pair of zip ties, duct tape, and one swimming goggle. The Dublin Police Department, unlike their colleagues in San Diego, took the home invasion seriously. Detective Lisa Crawford caught the case and immediately began investigating. When she examined the cell phone Marcus had left behind, she found it was registered to a man named Robert Sullivan. Some investigating revealed that Robert had a stepson named Marcus Sullivan, age 38, who lived in the area. Detective Crawford pulled up Marcus's background and was shocked by what she found. Marcus was a former Marine with an honorable discharge. He'd gone to Harvard Law School. He was currently working as an immigration attorney. On paper, he was the last person you'd expect to be breaking into homes in the middle of the night. But when Detective Crawford searched Marcus's apartment, what she found was damning. In Marcus's Lake Tahoe cabin, which he'd rented under a fake name, Crawford found a laptop computer. When she checked the serial number, it matched a laptop that had been reported stolen from a home in San Diego 3 months earlier. Ryan Foster's laptop, taken the night Jennifer was kidnapped. Crawford also found a pair of blacked-out swimming goggles. When forensic analysts examined them, they found a single strand of blonde hair stuck to the strap. DNA testing confirmed that hair belonged to Jennifer Martinez. Everything clicked into place: the swimming goggles, the zip ties, the middle-of-the-night home invasion, the same modus operandi. Marcus Sullivan hadn't just tried to kidnap the couple in Dublin. He'd successfully kidnapped Jennifer Martinez 3 months earlier, and the San Diego Police Department had called it a hoax. Detective Crawford immediately contacted San Diego PD and shared her findings. She also reached out to Jennifer directly, apologizing on behalf of law enforcement and asking if Jennifer would be willing to work with her on the case. Jennifer was overwhelmed with relief and vindication. Finally, someone believed her. Finally, there was evidence. But there was still work to do. Crawford needed to build an airtight case against Marcus Sullivan. Remember that security footage from the pre-intro? Jennifer and Ryan's neighbor had a camera system that captured part of the street and the side of their house. In the initial investigation, San Diego police had barely glanced at it, convinced the kidnapping was fake. But Detective Crawford requested all surveillance footage from the neighborhood around the date of Jennifer's abduction. And there it was. At 3:12 a.m. on March 23, 2015, a car matching Marcus Sullivan's vehicle was captured on camera, parking 2 houses down from Jennifer and Ryan's home. At 4:47 a.m., that same car is seen leaving, driving slowly with its headlights off. The footage wasn't clear enough to identify the driver, but combined with the other evidence, the laptop, the goggles with Jennifer's hair, Marcus's attempted kidnapping in Dublin, it painted a clear picture. Crawford also discovered that Marcus had been tracking Jennifer for weeks before the kidnapping. Cell phone records showed his phone pinging off towers near Jennifer's workplace, her home, places she frequented. He'd been stalking her, learning her routines, planning the perfect crime. But why Jennifer? What was his motive? The investigation revealed that Marcus had never met Jennifer before. She wasn't an ex-girlfriend or someone he had a grudge against. She was a random victim, chosen because she fit a certain profile that appealed to him. Marcus Sullivan was a serial predator. He'd assaulted multiple women over the years, using his intelligence and military training to plan elaborate crimes that he believed were impossible to solve. Jennifer wasn't his first victim. She was just the first one who escaped and spoke publicly about it. On June 29, 2015, Marcus Sullivan was arrested at his office. When police searched his belongings, they found detailed notes about potential victims, maps of neighborhoods, schedules of women he'd been tracking. He'd been planning his next kidnapping, and if David Chen hadn't fought him off in Dublin, Marcus would have done to another woman what he'd done to Jennifer. During interrogation, Marcus tried to maintain his innocence at first. But when confronted with the evidence, the laptop, the hair, the cell phone records, the surveillance footage, he finally broke down and confessed. Not just to Jennifer's kidnapping, but to other assaults going back years, to stalking dozens of women, to viewing women as objects to be controlled and dominated. The confession was detailed and disturbing. Marcus explained how he'd learned about Jennifer through random social media browsing, how he'd researched her, followed her, waited for the perfect opportunity, how he'd planned every detail of the abduction, believing his intelligence and careful planning made him untouchable. "I didn't think I'd ever get caught," he admitted to Detective Crawford. "I thought I was smarter than everyone else." The San Diego Police Department was forced to issue a public apology to Jennifer Martinez and Ryan Foster. The lieutenant who'd called their case a hoax was quietly reassigned. The department faced intense criticism for their handling of the investigation and their rush to judgment. Jennifer and Ryan, meanwhile, were finally vindicated. The media outlets that had called them liars issued retractions. The Gone Girl comparisons were replaced with stories praising Jennifer's courage and criticizing the police's incompetence. But for Jennifer, the vindication came with mixed emotions. Yes, she'd been proven right, but she'd also been traumatized twice, once by Marcus Sullivan and once by the system that was supposed to protect her. The trial of Marcus Sullivan began in March 2016 and lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of Jennifer's kidnapping, the assault, and Marcus's attempted home invasion in Dublin. They showed the jury the surveillance footage, the laptop with Ryan's serial number, the goggles with Jennifer's hair. They played Marcus's own confession. Jennifer took the stand and gave testimony that was both heartbreaking and powerful. She described every detail of her ordeal: the abduction, the drugs, the assault, the terror of not knowing if she'd survive. And she described the second trauma of being called a liar by the police and vilified by the media. "Marcus Sullivan stole 3 days of my life," she said. "But the San Diego Police Department stole 3 months. They took away my credibility, my reputation, my sense of safety. They made me a suspect when I was a victim." Marcus's defense tried to argue diminished capacity due to mental illness, but the evidence of his planning and intelligence made that impossible to sell. This wasn't a person who couldn't control their actions. This was a predator who'd carefully chosen his crimes. The jury took less than 5 hours to find Marcus Sullivan guilty on all counts. The aftermath of Jennifer's case led to significant changes in how law enforcement handles kidnapping reports. The San Diego Police Department implemented new protocols requiring a thorough investigation before any case is dismissed as a hoax. They brought in outside consultants to train officers on victim-centered approaches and implicit bias. Jennifer became an advocate for crime victims who aren't believed by law enforcement. She works with advocacy groups to support people who've been victimized twice, once by their attacker and once by a system that doubted them. "Trust victims first," she says in her advocacy work. "Investigate thoroughly. Don't let your assumptions about how a real victim should act cloud your judgment. Because I can tell you from experience, there's no right way to respond to trauma." Ryan and Jennifer's relationship survived the ordeal, though it was forever changed by what they endured. They eventually moved to a different state, seeking a fresh start away from the media attention and painful memories. The couple from Dublin, California, who fought off Marcus during his attempted second kidnapping were credited with ultimately solving Jennifer's case. If they hadn't fought back, if Marcus hadn't left that evidence behind, he might still be out there, and Jennifer might still be labeled a liar. Marcus Sullivan was convicted on the following charges: kidnapping, sexual assault, burglary, assault with a deadly weapon for the Dublin case, false imprisonment, and administering drugs without consent. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 47 years on the remaining charges. He will die in prison. During his sentencing, Marcus showed no remorse. He maintained that he was simply more intelligent than everyone else and that his arrest was a fluke, the result of one careless mistake in Dublin. The judge, in pronouncing sentence, had harsh words for Marcus's arrogance. You used your education and intelligence not to help others, but to harm them. You believed your Ivy League degree made you above the law, but intelligence without morality is just another word for evil. Jennifer Martinez was 29 years old when she survived one of the most terrifying experiences imaginable. She was drugged, kidnapped, held captive, and assaulted by a stranger. And then she was called a liar by the people who should have protected her. But Jennifer refused to be silenced. She fought for the truth. She proved her case. And she's now helping other victims do the same. Her story is a reminder that sometimes the most unbelievable stories are true. That victims deserve to be believed and investigated seriously. And that justice, though it may be delayed and hard-fought, is possible. Rest in peace to Jennifer's sense of safety and innocence, but celebrate her strength, her resilience, and her refusal to let anyone, not her attacker, not the police, not the media, define her narrative. She is a survivor, and she's making sure no other victim has to fight as hard as she did to be believed.